Hey there, Regina Anley here, and it is time for Tips and Tricks Tuesday. I'm digging this little music thing we got going on here. I think it just makes it more interesting as we come into our Tips and Tricks Tuesday sessions. Today, we're talking about business resilience. Let me bring my notes up here and make sure I cover everything, because while you might not really consider business resilience from a business standpoint and not think about it much, it is a huge part of your business. Business resilience is all about how you deal with change. So, have you ever had a plan that it looked really perfect on paper, but then life or business or the industry had completely different ideas on how that was going to work? I know I have many times. So, business resilience is all about how you deal with things when they shift. And I brought one of my all-time favorite books out. If you have not read this, really quick read, an hour or less to read it. It is called Who Moved My Cheese? And it is by, what's his name? Spencer Johnson. So hopefully you can see that. Who Moved My Cheese? Now, Who Moved My Cheese is all about dealing with change. I read this book, oh gosh, many, many years ago when I was in corporate world. And there's 4 characters total. There's Scratch and Sniff, 2 little mice, and then Hem and Haw, 2 little people. They're like the size of mice. And the whole thing about it is the cheese is the change. And it's all about understanding what you need to do to adapt. So in Hem and Haw and Sniff and Scurry's standpoint, they could either do what they need to do and adapt to change, or they can basically starve to death because they don't get the cheese. So Hem and Haw, go figure, hemming and hawing. And so they aren't quite as successful. Sniff and Scurry are the ones who basically sniff it out. They scurry around, they get things done, they make changes, they're adaptable. So in the end, they get the cheese, right? So sorry if that was a giveaway for the book. Read that book though. There is a ton of great information in there. If you haven't seen it, it's been out for years. I'm not even sure when it was originally published, but it is always one of my go-to books. Super quick read, and it will get your brain thinking about, well, what am I going to do in my business when something shifts, when something changes? Because the bottom line is that if you do not build your resilience muscle, at some point or other, something's going to happen in your business. Or if you're a solopreneur, it could be something's going to happen in your life that derails your business. The question is, are you going to let it derail it? Or are you going to be able to deal with the change to help you get through whatever it is? Maybe you have to adapt. Maybe you have to pivot. Maybe you have to do something different than you've done before. Now, something different for most people is way outside their comfort zone. Personally, I love change. I did not always love change. I used to hate things that changed. I used to be very, hey, this is the way it goes. This is how everything is, and it shouldn't change. It shouldn't shift because this is the way it is. Many, many, many years ago, before I even read Who Moved My Cheese, I made a shift, and it was basically because of need. It was literally stuff was happening, and I had no choice but to adapt and pivot. And so from that point on, I learned to actually love and embrace change. I am extremely resilient when it comes to anything going on in my life, in my business, because I am open to saying, okay, well, you know what? Well, that sucks. This completely changed. What am I going to do now? Let's think. I'll tell you something. A lot of times when something changes, it changes for the better. Something that was the way it was and you were so used to it, all of a sudden something happens. And once you get through the immediacy of whatever it was, all of a sudden you're like, wow, it is so much better now. So here's a short story for an example. back in 2000, 1999, 2000, I was setting up with a business coach that I was working with. I was setting up Kartra as a CRM for me, a customer relationship management program. Everything was set up. My program was on it. My email stuff was on it. All of my email list, everything. I had a ton of stuff going on it. Unfortunately, he passed away from COVID in 2020. When that happened, because I was under his agency account and I didn't have access, which I didn't realize at the time, I lost everything that was in that account. I was working with another consultant at the time, and I said, what am I going to do? I kind of freaked out. Everything I had set up was gone in a flash, just like that. I'm appealing to Kartra, asking them to give me access. They said, no, you're going to have to contact your lawyer. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? It's my stuff. They would not let me have it. So I set up on a new platform. And guess what? It looked 10 times better than it did on the old platform. The program was even better. I redid the program. I redid everything. And it came out that much better than it was in the original platform. Now, I didn't know that when I was in the midst of the change and freaking out because I just lost everything that I'd spent months and months creating. But it happened. This stuff happens. This is life. This is business. This is where resilience comes in, right? So it could be maybe you have this like program that you launched and everybody said they wanted it and then nobody showed up. It completely flopped. You have to adapt and pivot. Don't be so attached to everything that you can't let it go and change. That's what resilience is all about. So here are 5 quick tips to strengthen your resilience muscle, right? The first one is review what works. So every month, take a few minutes to ask, what is working well and why is it working well? And then do more of that with intention, right? Resilience starts growing when you stop chasing the new ideas and you start repeating what works. It also makes your life way easier instead of coming up with new stuff all the time. Repurposing content, repurposing data, repurposing programs. Think about what's working and do more of that. Review what worked. That's number 1. Schedule every month a what if hour. Now, way back in my technical days, I was a director of a major Northeast hosting facility where all the servers were. So think about, where all of your internet stuff lives, your CRMs live and all that kind of stuff. I managed a data center where all of that stuff lived. And we had a big contingency plan in place if something happened. What if the power goes out? What if a server goes down? What if? We had a contingency plan in place. So schedule a what if hour at least once a month and block some time out to ask, what if everything just dropped and changed tomorrow? What would I do? That way you're planning in advance. Your brain is at least thinking about it in advance. So when and if or when it happens, you're ready. Say you're working on your computer. If I'm working on my computer here and all of a sudden my computer dies, you know what? Everything's on my computer. What are you going to do if your computer dies? That's a big what if scenario. What if your computer dies? What are you going to do? Do you have a backup plan? Do you have contingency? This is how you stay resilient. So number 3 is ask for early feedback. Don't wait until you're done working with a client to say, okay, can you give me a testimonial? How did that work out for you? Ask along the way. Ask them if something's missing. Maybe you missed the mark on something that you were doing with them. Ask them as you go along. Get that input from your clients and from your audience while you're still creating it to make sure you're on target, to make sure something doesn't shift that you're going to all of a sudden have to pivot and change on. If you ask for that early feedback, in advance if you have to pivot right then and there, which is a lot easier doing a planned pivot than doing one because the floor just dropped out from under you. Number 4 is create that mini backup plan. What are you going to do? What is that backup plan if all of a sudden all your clients go away? What are you going to do for money? All of a sudden your computer breaks. What are you going to do? All of a sudden you have some physical issue and you're a solopreneur and you can no longer do your business. Do you have a backup plan? Create that mini backup plan so that you have something to go to. You know, a simple version of maybe your top service, your top stuff, so that, you know, if you have a person that you can rely on to say, hey, can you take over for me while this is going on? That's your backup plan. And number 5 is a big one. Protect your energy. You know, resilience is, it doesn't come from hustle, grind, and nonstop work. That isn't resilience. That's not even business if you're doing it right. It comes from your steady energy. So you need to rest. You need to set boundaries. You need to take breaks and keep your creativity going. So make sure you're protecting your energy. So those are the 5 quick tips for resilience. Review what worked. Schedule that what if hour once a month. Ask for that early feedback. Create your mini backup plan and protect your energy. So resilience isn't about building once the crisis hits. It's about having a plan in place so when something happens, because at some point, somewhere, something will. Have that plan in place so that you might freak out for a minute, which we all do. When something goes awry, you know, it's like, whoa, what do we do? But then you can stop, breathe, and go, you know what? I got a plan. I have an idea. I can shift. I can pivot. It's all good. And maybe it'll even be better than it was before. So ask yourself, what's a small area of my business that I can make more flexible this week? Ask yourself that question. And if you already have a resilience plan, a backup plan, something in place, or you have some tips of your own that you'd like to add in, put them in here under the comments so that we can all share and learn from each other. This is a community to build, learn, and share. So if you have your own tips on how you adapt and pivot on your specific business, we would love to hear them in the comments below. So that's what I've got for you this week on Tips and Tricks Tuesday. We will see you next week. Bye for now.